Section 268030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Sports Authority Board may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the Board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met.
Thank you, Teresa. And the item on our agenda this morning is presentation of the state report of bond obligation. And Teresa, do you want to say something before we let our counsel speak? Lillian, I think, is going to make a presentation. So.
Yes, no, I will gladly turn it over to our able bond counsel, Lillian Blackshear.
Okay, Lillian.
Okay, well, good morning. My name is Lillian Blackshear, and I, along with Jeff Oldham, work with Bass, Berry & Sims and served as bond counsel on the Sports Authority's Series 2012A Stadium Bonds and Series 2012B Arena Bonds. And as part of a state law requirement, after any public debt issuance, the governing body has to file a form with the state called the CT form, and basically that form is just a big information sheet on the debt, so it includes the basic terms of the debt. So this has always been done for Sports Authority bonds. As of this year, there's a new requirement that prior to filing this CT form, these forms have to be presented at a public meeting of the governing body. So that's why Jeff and I are here today to present this form. And so Monica sent each member of the board copies of the CT forms in advance, so we are free to accept questions on this form afterwards, but I thought maybe it would be a good idea to just go through the form and kind of discuss what's going on. So on the first page is basically very basic terms of the deals. If we start with the Series 2012A Stadium Bonds, you have on this first page the name of the public entity that's issuing the debt, which is of course the Sports Authority. You have the type of debt obligation, which in this case is obviously bonds. You have the security for the debt, which is revenue of the stadium. And then you have purposes of the issue, which we know are stadium improvements. You have the par amount of the debt, the type of sale, which was a negotiated sale in this case. You had the tax status of the bonds, and these bonds were of course taxable. You had the date, the ratings that were given by the rating agencies, and the true interest costs. So these are just basic terms of the deal. If you turn to the second page of the CT form, at box 13, you will see for the stadium bonds the amortization schedule for these bonds. And so you'll see that these bonds go out into 2033. And it's worthy of note that whereas the authority authorized these bonds to go out as far as 25 years, the deal was able to be structured so that the debt only goes out 22 years, which is a good thing, obviously, for the authority. In box 14, you'll see two sets of columns. The columns on the left, where the title of this issue is written, shows the time frame in which this issue of bonds will be paid off. So you'll see by year 25 that all of the bonds of this issue will be paid off, which we know because this debt only goes out 22 years. If you look at the second columns on the right where it says total debt outstanding, you will see all stadium debt of the Sports Authority and the time frame with which this debt will be paid off. And you'll see that by year 25, all of the stadium debt of the Sports Authority will be paid off. And this would include the Series 2004 bonds as well. If you turn the page on page 3, in box 15, you'll see an itemized description of all the costs of issuances incurred for these bonds. You'll have a listing of the financial advisor fees, bond counsel fees, which are our fees, the underwriters counsel fees, trustee fees, rating agency fees. You'll see the underwriter's discount for these bonds, and so on. On box 16 on page 3, you'll see a description of the continuing disclosure obligations. And pursuant to SEC rules, anytime you have a public debt issuance like this, the underwriter will require that the issuer agrees to update annually its financial information so that investors will know what's going on with the credit for the bonds. And so Metro, being the repository of all of the financial information in this case, has actually agreed to undertake this obligation for you. So the Sports Authority is not obligated at this point to update its information, but Metro is going to do it on its behalf. So you have here the individual that was responsible for undertaking these obligations, which is Laney Holland, the Metro Treasurer, when the annual disclosure is due, and then a description of the continuing disclosure agreement. And the continuing disclosure agreement is actually attached as an appendix to the official statement, which is the offering document for the bonds. And then there's a link to where you can find the official statement. On the next page, in box 17, you have a description of how the issuance of these bonds complies with the Sports Authority's debt management policy. And these bonds easily fit within the confines of the policy, but we highlighted a few issues in the policy just to show how the bonds complied. So there's a description of the purposes of all bonds issued by the authority, a description of transparency, the structure of debt, and the engagement of professionals. And so it complied completely with the policy, but we kind of spelled it out a little bit how it complied. If you move on to the last page, the attachment, that is just information that's required by the form, but that there wasn't space for in the actual CT form. So you have listed the weighted average maturity for the bonds, which is almost 13 years. You will have a breakdown of the underwriter's discount, so you can see what was used for what in the underwriter's discount. And in that last paragraph is basically just a continuation of explaining how these bonds complied with the policy. So that's for the stadium bonds. On the arena bonds, using the same forms, kind of the same type of information. On the front page is just basic information, the governing body, which is the authority that issued the bonds. You have the type of debt, which are bonds.
Hey, so Lillian, can I interrupt you just 1 second? Just to go back to the stadium deal, to reiterate a point Lillian made, Rich Riebling asked us to point out, he came to this board, I guess in December, and talked about what the numbers might look like. And on the stadium deal, he envisioned at that time $22,870,000 bond issue that would go out 25 years. And it went out 25 years. It went out that length because that generated a level of debt service that was payable by the revenue stream. Interest rates subsequently went down. So roughly the same par amount of bonds were issued, but the life of the issue was able to be shortened, which would, if rates were the same, would drive debt service payments up too much. But because interest rates had come down, the debt was able to be shortened 5 years and staying with those same revenue constraints. So I just wanted to make that point again. Sorry.
No. So on this front page of the CT form for the arena bonds, you have the same basic information. You have the type of debt, which are bonds, the security, which is revenues of the arena. The number 4, you have the purposes of these bonds, and these bonds were all refunding bonds for the 98 arena issue. You have the par amount of this debt, the type of sale, which is a negotiated sale, the tax status, which these bonds were also taxable, the date of these bonds, the ratings given by the rating agency, and then in box 11 you have the true interest cost for these bonds. If you turn the page on page 2, in box 13 you'll see how far this debt goes out, and you'll see that these bonds will be paid off by 2018, so they don't go out that far. You'll see in box 14 the time frame with which all arena bonds will be paid off, and these bonds are the only outstanding arena bonds because they refunded the 98 bonds. So you see that by year 10, all debt of the arena will be paid off. If you turn the page, page 3, box 15, you'll see again an itemized description of the fees incurred with these bonds. You'll see the financial advisor fees. You'll see our bond counsel fees. You'll see underwriters counsel fees, trustee fees, rating agency fees. You'll see the underwriter's discount, and so on. Likewise, in box 16, when describing the continuing disclosure obligations, the exact same thing that happened in the stadium CT form. Metro is going to do it on behalf of the Sports Authority. On the next page, box 17, you have a description of how these bonds comply with the authority's debt management policy. And again, it complied easily with within the confines of the policy, and it's just a description of how each section of the policy was complied with. And it's also worthy of note for these arena bonds, originally, Rich, I guess, kind of estimated that the savings for these bonds, or generated by these bonds, would be a little over $940,000, and we actually ended up saving a little over $1.2 million. So that's a good thing. More savings were generated than anticipated. And if you turn the page, that last page, which again is an attachment, is the exact same thing that occurred in the stadium bonds. Information required by the CT form, but space was not allotted for it within the CT form, so we just kind of added an attachment to the form. The weighted average maturity of these bonds is a little over 3.5 years, so it's very short. You have an itemization of the underwriter's discount, so you can see what is going where. And then that last paragraph just is a continuation of the explanation of how these bonds comport with the debt management policy. And Jeff, did you want to add anything else?
No.
Do you have any questions or anything?
I don't have any questions, and our members have seen this, so this does not require any action. It's just information that will be passed along and to the authority. Any questions or any comments? Okay. Mr. President, you have any?
Good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.